Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing Who is Better. The topic for this Who is Better? Natalya Neidhart and Beth Phoenix. Two of the best women's wrestlers of the last 20 years or so. Two women who had epic battles against and with each other. Two women who I honestly think are very fairly matched up. With all that being said, if you haven't seen my Who Was Better videos previously, I grade every category on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And for that, there's going to be 8 separate categories. At the end, we will total up the points to see who the winner is. There is a chance for 5 bonus points, so stay tuned till that time to see that. With all that being said, let's jump right in with our first category, technical wrestling. For this, I'm going to start with Natalya. I'm going to give Natalya a 5. I think she is definitely a product of the Hart family, definitely a product of their style of wrestling. She is one of the best technical wrestlers in the history of women's wrestling, in my opinion. And I think you could take her, implant her in any wrestling organization, anytime in the history of women's wrestling, and she would fit right in. That's how great I think she is. I think she is on the top of the food chain here. That's why she gets a 5. Now for Beth Phoenix, Beth, I'm going to go just a bit lower. Beth is going to get a 4. While I do think Beth is really good at this, I don't think she breaks into that upper echelon. And a lot of that is the style that Beth had most of her career. She was the bigger woman, the glamazon, so she had more of an advantage in other ways. That's not to say that she wasn't a great technical wrestler, she just wasn't quite as good as Natalya. Now going to our next category, striking. For Natalya, I'm giving Natalya a 4. Again, this is basically going to be the inverse of the first category. I do think that Natalya is a highly competent striker. However, she's been portrayed her whole career as a disciple of the Hart family, which when you think Hart family, you think submission wrestling, you think technical wrestling, not necessarily striking. She is very good at it. I just don't think she cracks that upper echelon. For Beth Phoenix, this is where I think Beth does crack the upper echelon. Beth, I'm giving a 5. Like I said, this more fit into her style, the overpowering, overwhelming, just force of nature that she was. Just an absolutely amazing talent. Both of them, to be honest with you. But this is where these first two categories are where they stand out the most in their in-ring skills. I love both of these women. They're both amazing here. Now, next category, how they perform as a heel. For Natalya, I'm giving Natalya a 3. It's not that she doesn't give her best when she is a heel. There is something genuinely just likable about Natalya that you want to root for her. No matter what. She's one of those wrestlers that you don't really ever want to boo. And you know her legacy, and you know what she's done for the past 2 decades in the WWE. She's just really good. It's hard for her to be a heel. That's why she gets a 3. Now for Beth Phoenix, I'm giving Beth a 4. Beth could come across as a bully at times. And for that specific reason, even though I do think she works better as a face, I do think she makes a great heel too. Someone that just picks on the lesser talent, the smaller talent. I think she does really great here. She's getting a 4. Next up, how they perform as a babyface. Natalya, you could probably guess I'm giving her a 5. Like I said, for most of her career, she's not really had any storyline. She's had some here and there, very sporadically. However, the fans continue to get behind her. They love her. They love the fact that here's Jim Neidhart's daughter, Bret Hart's niece. They love that she's not the quintessential diva that came out of that Total Divas era with the Bellas and Eva Marie. She's something different. She's beautiful, she's gorgeous, but she has more of a tomboy feel to her. She does absolutely great as a babyface. She's getting a 5 here. Now for Beth Phoenix, Beth is getting a 4. The one thing I will say about Beth, where she gets a 4 as to where Natalya gets a 5, I don't think she has that it factor that Natalya has that just automatically connects with the crowd. She has to work with it a little more, has to work for that connection. So for that reason, I think she gets a 4. Now going to our next category, both of these women's worst category, promos. And I'm giving them both the same number. they're both getting a 2. If you've seen these before, I've discussed how I think 3 is basically good, passing, you're going to skate by. Below 3 is when you start to get into the bad. Above 3 is when you get into the good to really good. But 3 is basically a C in school. And this is where I think these are D players. And it's really weird because seeing Natalya on Total Divas, she's very charismatic there. And hearing Beth Phoenix when she did commentary, she was very charismatic there. However, when they were asked to do promos and talk about their wrestling in a wrestling context, I don't think either one was even serviceable, or is even serviceable. They're not the worst promos I've ever heard, but there's a reason why you don't remember any of their promos and couldn't cite any words from any of them to me. And again, like I said, this is their worst category for both of them. They're both getting a 2 here. Next up, presentation. For Natalya, she's going to get a 4. The thing that separates Natalya from getting a 5 and a 4 is that she's just copying her family presentation. There is a little bit of differences, but she's wearing the jacket that her father and her uncle wore, basically. She's wearing the pink and black. She never really evolved it to make it much of her own, her distinct way. And where I think someone like Charlotte, where Charlotte has homages to Rick, the robe, certain parts of her gear, Charlotte's also added her own quote-unquote flair to it. Whereas Natalya, I think, is more willing to go back to her connection through the family. So for that, she gets a 4. Now for Beth Phoenix, Beth is getting a 5. Whether it's the crown, the gear, the way she was presented, Beth Phoenix looked like something totally different. There's a reason why she's one of the few women to ever enter the Men's Royal Rumble. There's a reason why she looks so dominant and looked so beautiful at the same time. She literally looked like an Amazon woman, like someone that should not exist in real life. With that, I'm giving her a 5. I think she's amazing in her presentation. Next up, charisma. Now for Natalya, this may go against what I said earlier about the connection, but for Natalya, I'm giving her a 3. And here's the reason. She has a natural connection, which equals a natural charisma, but where she has that, she hasn't really built on that. That's something that a wrestler like Sami Zayn has. Sami Zayn has a natural connection. Jey Uso has a natural connection. Joe Hendry has that. The difference between those wrestlers and Natalya is they used that and helped that to build their connection even further. It's kind of like what I said about the presentation. It does feel like she leans a little too much into the Hart family. And yes, she should lean into the Hart family, but why is Natalya different than the other ones? I could tell you why Jim was different than Bret. I could tell you why Owen was different than Bret, or Owen was different than Jim. And yes, I know Natalya is a woman and they're men. There was distinct charisma between those, whereas she just feels like, hey, look at me, I'm a Hart. And I know this sounds bad, and 3 is not bad. Like I said, it's right at middle of the road, but that's my opinion on it. Now for Beth Phoenix, Beth, I'm giving a 4. Again, she had to work harder to get there, but I think she did work harder to get there charisma-wise. I'm not saying that Natalya's not a hard worker. I think she put most of her hard work and eggs in the basket if I'm going to be the best wrestler in the women's division. Beth developed the charisma that eventually won the fans over. And once she got over, she stayed over. She made that connection. The fans love her. If she walked out into a wrestling ring today, she would get a standing ovation. And it's not just because of the surprise pop, it's because the fans just love her that much. That's why I'm giving her a 4. Now, last but not least, our final category, big game performance. This is how you perform when you're in the title match, the main event, the show's built around you. Now, I will say, as a product of the time, more for Beth and Natalya, because Natalya's going on into the Women's Revolution era, they didn't get as many opportunities as some of the newer women like Bianca or Rhea have. However, when they did have the opportunities, they both stepped it up in a major way. I'm giving both of them a 5. Whenever either of these women are in an important match, that is probably going to be the best match of the night or one of the 2 or 3 best matches of the night. And it really all depends on the time that they're given. If you give either of these women 10 to 20 minutes, they're going to put on a match of the night candidate. I think they're absolutely amazing. That's why they both get 5s here. Now, with that being said, you heard me mention earlier, We're going to total these up, so let's do that right now. Natalya gets a 31, Beth gets a 33, but wait, there's a bonus. I did talk about that earlier as well. Each wrestler has an opportunity to get 5 bonus points, and how they do that, every Wednesday I put on my posts page here on YouTube a poll, and it simply says, who is better? The winner's going to get 5 bonus points. I put up Natalya, put up Beth Phoenix, and the winner was Natalya. Natalya coming from behind gets the 5 bonus points, bringing her up to 36. Taking that come from behind win. Kind of why I do this, because it gives you guys a little voice in this, so it's not just strictly me and how I feel. But as you can see here, sometimes it swings the decision, sometimes it just reiterates what I already thought. But in here, it gave Natalya the win. And she definitely deserved it. And it's not to say that Beth Phoenix isn't great. If you go by my numbers, I think she's a bit better than Natalya. But I could see why people would vote for Natalya. She has the longevity, she has the impact. When push comes to shove, her career just stacks up just a little bit better. Now, with all that being said, pay attention to that posts page. You're going to see Wednesday a new poll for next week's Who Was Better. You can vote on it there and have your voice heard on my next video. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Who Was Better.